Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, hello, welcome. My name is Krystle and I talk about books. I talk about books on my channel and some lifestyle things, which I'd like to get into eventually. But I'm back. I took a year off, a year hiatus from YouTube to take care of my family, to raise my little guy. I want to say the last time we spoke I was still pregnant. Now we do have a beautiful son named Noah James, and he is the light of my life, but also keeps me on my toes, keeps me very busy. So hence why I haven't been here in a while, but I'm finally starting to get back into the swing of things and get back into YouTube. So that is why I'm here. And what better way to get back into it during the fall season, which is my favorite time of year. October is literally my favorite month of the year, just like majority of us here, I'm sure. We just find more time to read and relax and get cozy and just be our nerdy book selves. So I'm so excited to share with you my October TBR, which is tentative as always, but the books that I want to read spooky season. And also I have some recommendations for you guys if you're still looking for books to get you in the mood for this season. I know some parts of the world, including mine in Jersey, we're just not in fall yet. Like today is almost 80 degrees as I'm filming this, and I just want cool, crisp air, and I want the leaves to start changing already. So as of right now, it's still kind of summer here, but reading atmospheric books, bringing me into the fall season just by reading and the things that I'm watching is kind of getting me there. Let's first get into the books that I want to read this season, that I'm currently reading, and I want to discuss that first. So my current read is An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. Now this author, I did previously promotion for The Year of the Witching when they first came out with their debut novel, which for a debut, The Year of the Witching is an excellent book. So if you're looking for something to read spooky season that is YA and witchy, but it's pretty dark, and I will say Alexis Henderson really goes into those dark depths of our minds with her books. So definitely check out The Year of the Witching. I loved that book and I'm actually looking to reread it. But this is her newest release, An Academy for Liars, and this is a dark academia style book, but boy, so far is it a wild ride. I am loving every minute of this book so far. And if you look onto Goodreads, which I made the mistake of doing, I always do that before I read books, and I have to stop doing that because it really ruins books for me a lot of the time. But the reviews are a little mixed for this book, so I would go into this not knowing much, and I think you will enjoy it so much more. But it is definitely a wild ride. Like, I'm only a quarter of the way through, loving it so far. I don't know how it's gonna end. I could totally change my mind at the end of this book, but right now it's exactly what I want. It's dark, it's spooky, it's giving me Ninth House vibes a little bit, but along with some Anne Rice vibes. Like, it's such an honor to be compared to Anne Rice, but Alexis Henderson grabs you from page one with the writing, and I feel the same way when I read Anne Rice, that it's almost like being put under a spell. That's how I feel when reading Alexis Henderson's books, and also how I feel about reading Anne Rice's books. And the only difference is, like, their writing is not as dense as Anne Rice. With Anne Rice, I feel like if I read 5 pages, I feel like I've been reading forever, but loving every minute of it. But if I read 5 pages and a half an hour goes by, I'm like, I read only 5 pages. So I am a little bit on the slower side of reading, but that's just the difference. But realistically, like, I do feel like that little bit of comparison of just excellent writing. So if you're looking for a great spooky dark academia book, it gives me a little bit of the Magicians vibes. I don't know if anyone's ever read that series or seen the show. I didn't read the series, but I watched the show. I'm a big fan of the show. But it does give the Magicians vibes a lot. I am comparing a lot of things with the characters and stuff like that to that show in my mind, and how things at this Drayton school is kind of going. But that's all I'll give you on that. Let me know if you are currently reading this or if you read it and loved it. Just keep kind of spoilers to a minimum in the comment. The next I'd like to get into, let's see what we have here. We have 2 novellas here. So I would love to read What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher and Graveyard Shift by M.L. Rio. Last year I read If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio and absolutely loved that book. It was so well written and just the story itself was so great. I couldn't even believe that it was labeled as YA. I would say that it kind of teeters back and forth between adult and YA. So I'm curious to see M.L. Rio. I want to say this is an adult novella, but I love the cover. As much as rats creep me out, it's kind of cute here, but with the mushrooms, I just think it's so cool. And if this book is anything like the writing in If We Were Villains, I know I'm just gonna eat this up. And it's spooky. It's about a group of kids that go, like, not kids, like college students that go to this graveyard at night because they can't sleep, and they find this like dug up grave, and that's kind of where the story goes. I'm assuming that's all in the synopsis. I did not look this up on Goodreads. I don't want to know reviews until I am done with it. And then What Moves the Dead is like a retelling of The House of Usher, which is one of my favorite stories by Edgar Allan Poe, who is an amazing writer and poet throughout the centuries. The House of Usher was also a TV show by Mike Flanagan, who did it on Netflix, and his adaptation was great as well. So I'm really loving reading or watching adaptations of Edgar Allan Poe's works and kind of like reworking and seeing people's perspectives on his work. I think that's really cool. So I'm looking forward to reading this, and this seems like a very quick read as well. I'm looking into some quicker reads for this season so I could read a lot more than my average of 4 or 5 books a month. But then I have this book, which I've been reading on and off for I feel like years, so I kind of restarted it. This is Revival by Stephen King. This is more of his recent works, so I wouldn't call it a Stephen King classic just yet, but I do listen to Stephen King podcasts. It's one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. I listen to the King Cast because Kate Siegel is always on there, and I just really enjoy hearing women's perspectives on the horror genre. So if you're interested in hearing that, if you read a lot of horror or you watch a lot of horror, I definitely recommend that podcast because the King Cast does bring in a lot of famous directors, actors, writers in that genre onto their show. So it's really cool. And then they talk about Stephen King and how Stephen King has affected their lives, which is really cool. But anyway, this book is about, it's kind of a coming of age story, follows a young man throughout his life, which I do love the way Stephen King writes about coming of age and how, you know, growing up is in a certain time, and it also takes place in Maine as well. So, you know, I love his stories about that. He does coming of age very well, and that's one of my favorite things about him, like I said. But so this is about, it's kind of like about faith and how it could be twisted. And there's this new minister that comes to this town when this boy was very young, and something happens and he kind of disappears, and then they kind of meet again later on. And it's just, I heard this is one of his most terrifying books that he's written, so I'm curious to see how that is. And also this cover is just so spooky. It actually reminds me of a cemetery that's not very far from my house, and this is like what it looks like at night. So I was like, maybe I'll pick this up, see how it is. It is very sci-fi from what I'm reading at the moment, because they are talking about electricity a lot, so we shall see how that goes. And then I have a book that will kind of break things up and be a nice little palette cleanser for all the dark stuff that I'll be reading. Rewitched by Lucy Jane Wood. This is a new release, and it just sounds like warm and cozy, and sometimes you're just in the mood for that during this time of year as well, just like something about that's witchy and about finding yourself and families. And this just sounds like a witchy bookworm's dream of a book, so I'm excited to get into this and let you guys know what I think. But as you guys know, if you've been watching my channel for a long time, I love reading books about witches. I love researching witchcraft. I love anything that has to do with this, so this might be one of the most perfect books for me for this season, as you know, sometimes I don't want to read the dark stuff, you know, especially now having children. It's kind of having a child makes it a little harder to read some of the dark things that are out there, because your mind kind of goes to other places, especially when you know, have a little vulnerable person to take care of. Then next I have The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst, which I have been reading since it came out. I'm really enjoying it, but I'm not getting like the vibe of like what season is perfect for this book. I feel like the spring would have been better to pick this up, because it's just so whimsical and cozy. It's not giving me fall vibes, but I do want to read it this season and just get it done, because it's so cute so far. And this is kind of my nighttime read before I go to bed, and that, so I will be keeping this right by my bedside. But it's witchy, it's cute, small town, romancy. The main character was a librarian and protected these special books and the grimoires in this library, and the library ends up burning down, so she goes back to her hometown to live with her pet plant, which I have my Phil. This is Phil. It's a philodendron, but I call him Phil. So he's my Kaz. And I just think it's such a cute perspective to get like a plant's perspective, because my plants are my babies. I feel like they have personalities. I love them so much. I give them so much love. They give me so much love, and it's just, you know, they may not speak or show too much emotion, but they're living beings. So I think this is so cool of a concept to have a perspective of a house plant. So very cool. So I'm looking forward to getting this done and reviewing it, and I think it's going to be a well-loved favorite for a long time. Then next I have an anticipated read for me, and that is The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig. I have read Salt and Sorrow, House of Salt and Sorrow by Erin A. Craig. I've read Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. I still have yet to read House of Roots and Ruin. When they announced this book, I was like, oh yes, I need to get my hands on this. This just sounds like the perfect atmospheric fall read, creepy, gothic. It's just, it checks all the boxes for me. I do really love Erin A. Craig's writing. I think they have such beautiful way of writing gothic stories that just hook you from the first page. And I did read the first page of this already, and I was just like, I need this to just be the sole book that I'm reading at the moment, because I know I'm going to get absolutely lost in this, and I can't wait. And look how beautiful it is. It's just so nice. Look at this cover. I'm obsessed. It is a retelling of one of Grimm's fairy tales. I think like Godfather Death, I think it's called, which I'm not very familiar with, but I plan on reading this first and then maybe visiting that fairy tale to see the comparison. Then next I have here The Queen of the Damned by Miss Anne Rice. this is a book that I've been wanting to read for before the end of the year. I try to pick up an Anne Rice pretty much every year around this time. I read Interview with the Vampire when I first moved into my house, which was 2 years ago, around September, and I fell in love. And then I watched the TV show Interview with the Vampire, and then I watched the movie, and I just fell in love with Anne Rice's take on vampires. I think she really holds true to the whole Dracula thing and how vampires are, and they are dark beings, they are murderous beings, and they are horrific. So I think, you know, this is going to be an amazing book for me to read this season. I want to continue on that challenge for myself, like every spooky season, picking up an Anne Rice and continuing with the Lestat series. I know that there are so many books in the series and so much to get to, so I kind of have my work cut out for me, but I'm sorry that I haven't visited Anne Rice's works sooner, because I think she will be an all-time favorite author for me. I loved The Vampire Lestat. That was one of my favorite books that I read last year. I'm still thinking about it to this day. So I can't wait to get back into this world and visit my favorite vampire. My favorite vampire used to be Edward from Twilight, but now reading Anne Rice, Lestat is definitely my favorite vampire, even though he could be pretty tough and pretty evil. It's just, he holds true to the whole folklore of what vampires are, and I love it. I love it. And then I have a classic, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This has been on so many TBRs for me. I actually was supposed to read this in school as a required reading back when I was in high school, which was, I'm not going to tell you how long ago that was. And I still have not read this book yet, so I plan on picking it up. I started reading a little bit, and it seemed like it was more of a winter read, like atmosphere, but it is Frankenstein, it is spooky season, so I plan on picking this up before the end of the month for sure. And then this way we could check it off the list of classics that I have been meaning to read. And then lastly, I have this thriller that's been on my TBR for quite some time, and I'm not sure if it takes place on Halloween, but I know that some people say it gives like Halloween-ish vibes, and it's super gothic, super spooky, kind of gives some supernatural feels to it. So I'm looking forward to getting into this thriller, and that is Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This author is a hit or miss for me, but I have heard so many people talk about this book and how much they loved it and how it was a 5-star read. So I want to see that for myself. So this will be probably, once I finish Academy for Liars, I will probably pick this up just to kind of break things up from the fantasy that I've been reading, because a lot of the books that I read here are kind of fantasy-ish, sci-fi-ish. So yeah, but definitely want to get to this month. Have to get to this month. It's a must. Let me know if you've read Daisy Darker, if you liked it, but no spoilers. It's a thriller. You don't want to give things away. Almost forgot one book that I've been wanting to read. I have like a whole slew of books in front of me right now that I have not read yet, and I plan on, but The Invocations by Krystle Sutherland, who is the author of House of Hollow, which I absolutely loved. Such a quirky, weird horror book about 3 sisters. Highly recommend it. Pick it up. It's really, really great for spooky season, and I love the cover of that. This is The Invocations by Krystle Sutherland, which is kind of a witchy book. From what I'm getting like occult witchy vibes from this book. From when I read the synopsis, I know it's feminist. I know it has a lot of that type of elements to it, but I know that it has to do with like a supernatural killer on the loose, and like these people have to come together and like fight the forces of it. So it sounds very Charmed like to me a little, and it also takes place on Halloween. The first page says All Hallows Eve, so I was like, okay, this is perfect. And I'm really loving, like, this author is great, but I just love the dedication. It says, for all the angry girls. I could totally relate to that. So very much looking forward to getting into this, and I'll probably read it a little closer to Halloween. You know, spooky vibes. So that is it for my TBR portion of this video. Now let's get into some recommendations. Okay, so I have a little bit of something for everybody on this list because not all of us are the same type of reader, and I try to read a little bit more of every little genre so I could have a broader opinion on books that are coming out and books that have been out, and just kind of broader, why can't I say that? Making my book selections a little bit on the broader side so that when I do get a little tired of fantasy, I could pick up romance, and then when I get tired of romance, I could pick up some horror. I read a little bit of everything, and I think, you know, everyone should kind of read a little bit of everything just to keep things a little bit more interesting. So the first book that I have here, because I'm just going to kind of go off the big pile that I have here, I'm going to recommend Ninth House. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I think this book embodies fall to the greatest extent. It has ghosts, it has secret societies, it's dark academia. It takes place between September, October, and November. The perfect book for spooky season did not exist until this book came out. So I highly recommend this. This is fantasy and horror. It is a little dark, so if you are someone that is sensitive to certain things, definitely look up trigger warnings before getting into this book. But if you are looking for the perfect book to set you into the fall spirit with the perfect atmosphere, this is it right here. I'm telling you, I'm never wrong about my recommendations, and this has been on previous recommendations videos. Check this out. I swear you're gonna love it. If you love my channel, you love the books that I read, you're gonna love this book. Then I want to recommend A Dowy of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I have only read this one book from S.T. Gibson, and I really loved their take on vampires, on Dracula and his brides. I just really loved this, and it was very spellbinding to read. It kind of just sucked me in, and I read this in one sitting. I couldn't believe how quickly I read it. I actually was sitting in this chair looking at my beautiful window. I have a beautiful landscape of trees. When it's fall, they just turn orange. It's beautiful. Anyway, and I'm sitting here and I blew through this book, and when I was done, I was just so blown away by it that I had a hard time picking anything else up afterwards. So I highly recommend this book. You just feel like someone is telling you this amazing story about their life. It's just, I don't know. It's really good. It's horror. It's about vampires. Dark subject, so definitely look up trigger warnings as well. For majority of these books, I would recommend looking up trigger warnings anyway. But yeah, excellent book. Highly recommend. Then I have a dark academia book for you guys, and that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is such a thought out, genius book. There were points when I was reading this that I was like, I am not smart enough to be reading this book. Like, what? Like, this author is just amazing. Anyway, but yeah, I felt like I just wasn't worthy enough to be reading this book. That's how smart and thought out, and it was just a genius idea, like so creative. Especially on the dark academia side of things. I just really love the characters as well. So highly recommend this book. It is pretty dense. It's not a quick read, but highly recommend if you love dark academia, if you love spooky. It does take place over time. It's not, you know, a short time frame like how Ninth House is a shorter time frame of a couple months, and I think like a year prior kind of jump. This is a couple years. Yeah, highly recommend Babel. however anyone wants to say it. Really enjoyed this book and looking forward to reading a lot more from R.F. Kuang. Then I have here Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. If you are looking to find vampires that don't sparkle in the sunlight, pick up Anne Rice's vampire books. Like I said previously, I just love her books. I eat them up. I love Lestat as a vampire. I love her take on vampires. I come from the generation of vampires. Like, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is my favorite TV show, still is my favorite TV show of all time. Supernatural, Charmed, very much into the campy vampire, supernatural type stuff. That's just my livelihood. I still watch those shows to this day. So this was written in the 70s, I want to say, or published in the 70s. So it's definitely a work of its time, but also it's definitely like works today as well. So highly recommend reading Anne Rice if you want one of the best vampire novels that I've ever read. Then next I have a couple of Stephen King's here because Stephen King is my buddy, my best pal, my best friend. He's dad energy 100% all the way. Stephen King's Night Shift. If you're looking for short stories to spook you out, you know, something to read before bed, this is my favorite short story collection from Stephen King. It's just so, it has everything that he's known for in it. So spooky, so creepy, so creative in the horror, and I wish they would do more adaptations of some of the books, some of the stories that are in here. I want to say that they have done a few, like the story of Jerusalem, oh my god, the story of Jerusalem's Lot in here is a great preview into Salem's Lot, which will be my next recommendation of Stephen King for you. And that, let me get to it. Salem's Lot, which I love the new covers that came out for Stephen King's books. They're starting to do like his old school vintage covers, so I might have to get rid of a lot of these and sell them on Pango to restock my collection with the new stuff. But Salem's Lot, I have read this book for probably the last 10 years every September. And now his book, Salem's Lot, is now a movie on HBO Max or Max. So if you're looking for something spooky to watch, it's definitely a horror take, like a really severe horror take on vampires. I don't love the adaptation, and that's like for another day. I don't love it, but I do recommend it. I still love the book better. I think the casting could have been a little bit better for the people that were in the movie, but we'll get to that at another point. But yeah, highly recommend Salem's Lot. This is one of his most atmospheric books, especially for the fall. The way he describes the leaves and just the area in Maine and the Marsden house, and it just gives you all the cozy fall vibes, along with a lot of horror and vampires coming to the town. I always say that this is like the take on like if Dracula was to come to the US, if Dracula was to just be dropped off in your hometown. That's what this book is about. It's so good, but definitely look up trigger warnings. Just remember, Stephen King is an author of his time as well as Anne Rice was. So there, you might find some problematic things in there, but give him a little bit of grace. He's come a long way. But his books stand the test of time, I think. But always, like I said before, check your trigger warnings again. And then I have this Stephen King, which is called Under the Dome, which is technically one of his fall books, and it's pretty atmospheric. It begins in October, and I think it ends on Halloween. So if you are looking for a big hefty, you can tell that I've tabbed this, big hefty Stephen King fall vibe, small town hysteria type book, check this out. I read this during COVID, and it really like a lot of things were similar, like The Stand too, like what we were going through with COVID. It was very like reminiscent of The Stand and Under the Dome in a lot of ways. But yeah, just check it out. This is one of my good friend's favorite Stephen King, and he's read almost every single book of his, and this is like his favorite. I'm not exactly sure why, because there's a lot of hateful characters in here, but it does give, you know, the fall atmosphere, fall vibes. I would say it's horror, but there's a lot of like mania involved and like supernatural things. Don't really know what's going on. Then next I have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This is a light and fluffy, you know, kind of like a open door. Is it open door romance? Is that what they call it these days? Or closed door, kind of like, just like, it's not, there's no steamy scenes in here, but it's witchy, it's witty, it's fun, it's cute, it's heartwarming, it has all the feels, and it's just cozy. So if you're looking for a cozy witchy read with a little bit of romance, very Hallmark Channel, like with a little CW, check this out. I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite books. And I cannot wait for this author's next book to come out, which I think is next year. I feel like I've been waiting forever for this book to come out, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's coming out in the spring. The next I'd like to recommend, The Haunting of Hill House. If you have not read this book, but you've seen the show, I highly recommend reading the book because the show is very good, and Michael Flanagan, again, has done that, and I love his adaptations of everything that he does. But the book is very different than the show, and I think if you were a fan of the show, definitely read the book. But this gives all spooky, ghostly vibes, perfect for fall season, great atmosphere. It's a classic. It stands the test of time. So if you're looking for something on the shorter side to add to your spooky TBR this month, I highly recommend checking this out. I have a cozy mystery here, and that is In the Company of Witches by Aurelie Wallace, which I found out that this author is not continuing the series, and I'm like very upset about it because I really enjoyed the characters. I fell in love with these characters. I'm not big on reading, you know, cozy mysteries a lot, but this was so good and I loved it so much, and it's witchy and it's ghosty and just cozy. It's just so good. So I highly recommend that. And then I have a new favorite, and that is Fantasma by Kaylee Smith. I read this book last month, and oh my goodness, this is the perfect spooky season read for our romance lovers, our steamy romance lovers. For me personally, I'm not big on spicy, steamy scenes. I kind of skim through them. They make me feel a little uncomfortable sometimes. The descriptions are a little for me. But I really enjoyed the story, and it hooked me from page one. I will say if half of the steamy scenes in the book were eliminated, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more than I did, which I really enjoyed it. It probably would have been like a 6-star book for me if there wasn't as many steamy scenes in it. And they kind of take you out of the story. That's the only problem that I have about this book, is that I'm so into it, I'm so getting into it, and then these steamy scenes happen. I'm like, can we just get to like who's gonna die next, please? Like, I just wanted to get there, and I just felt like it was taking me out of the story too much. So that's why I felt the steamy scenes could have some of them could have been eliminated. They weren't all necessary, but loved this book. Highly recommend. And I'm sure a lot of people that have read it feel the same way. Then I have here this weird, spooky book, and that is Her Soul to Take by Harley LaRue. First dark romance like this that I've read. I really enjoyed it. I love the content. The storyline's great. Like I said, steamy scenes are a little much for me, but that's what this genre is. It's a lot of spicy, steamy scenes, so I do kind of skim through things. And the mention of his demon private part, it's a little weird for me. I told my husband about it, and he's like, what? the hell are you reading? And I'm like, I don't really know, but I'm really liking it. So I highly recommend this. This is great for spooky season. It has a little bit of a dark academia feel to it. It's about a ghost hunter who like friends and becomes a lover to a demon. So it's just, it's good. It's good. It's good for spooky season. So I highly recommend, and I plan on continuing more of these books in the series. And then I have one that I laugh about all the time because it's like a Twilight spoof book in my eyes, but Crave by Tracy Wolff. This has all the elements of a CW show that you're looking for if you are like me and just love Vampire Diaries and Buffy and Charmed and all, and like anything that the legacies, like anything that have to do with CW and school and, you know, weird creatures. Crave is the book for you. And the series, I'm so into the series right now. I'm going to be starting Covet next month. I'm into it. When I first read this, I actually read this with Heather on Bookables. We buddy read this and we had so much fun just laughing about it. But then it stuck with me for so long and I was like, yeah, I don't plan on reading the series. I think she continued on with the series for a little while, but I was like, it's just such a spoofy book to me, but it stuck with me. So over the summer, I picked up Crush, and I'm like, I freaking love this series. So I highly recommend it. It has vampires, it has witches, it has all kinds of weird werewolves. It's got everything. Everything supernatural in it is in it. It takes place at a boarding school that, you know, houses all these supernatural beings. So I highly recommend it. I think it's great, especially for spooky season if you want something light on the horror, but you want that dark academia, you want witches, you want werewolves, you want supernatural creatures. This has a little bit of everything in it. And yeah, so I enjoy that book series. A lot more than I thought, but I did. Anyway, so that is it. That is all I have for you today. That was my October TBR. That was my recommendations for spooky season for the fall. Some atmospheric books for you guys to get into. And I'm just happy to be back. I'm hoping to have videos up for you at least once a week. Can't make any promises, but vlogging seems to be a thing for me now. I'm going to try to get more into vlogging as well. And just make sure you check me out on all my social medias. They're linked down below. I do post on TikTok. I do have an Instagram. And Instagram is the best way to get in touch with me if you're looking to buddy read any books or just talk about some books. That's the best way that you can reach me. All links to that is down below. And if you like this video and you want to see more from me, please like and subscribe. On that note, thank you so much for watching, and I will be talking to all of you guys very soon. Bye!